speakers. Thank you for wherever you're calling in from. We're going to be talking about the Middle East and North Africa today. We've got 4 expert speakers. They're going to be speaking about 5 minutes each, and then send in your questions along the way. We'll have 30 minutes at the end to answer all of your questions. And so if any of you are members and you don't get your question answered, or any of the speakers or people you'd like to meet, send us an email at info@globalchamber.org. So our first speaker is Amer, and Amer is a co-founder, VP, and Chief Marketing Officer at Primus. He's basically Primus. He's an extraordinary fellow. He's on a world tour right now around the U.S. He's going back to the Middle East here shortly. He's going to be telling us, he's based in Jordan. He's going to be telling us about his perspectives of dealing in the region. Their Primus, their primary presence is in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Qatar, and Palestine. But he clearly has a very global experience, and he's been all around. So Amer, we really look forward to hearing from you and getting your perspectives. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're all set.
I'm all set. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amer Nasereddin. I am the co-founder of Primus, based out of Amman, Jordan. As I was telling Doug earlier, I'm proud and honored to be here. I come from the Middle East. I have one wife and 3 kids, and I travel a lot. So it's kind of hard on all of them, but this is business. I would like to start, I had something in mind, but as I was entering this morning to take an Uber to come here, I met this gentleman who's been in Jordan for the past 40 years, and he was doing business, and he was telling me his experience of doing business in the Middle East and how it was all about trust and respect, and it reflects about what I was just going to say. And he said he came in and met with the decision maker, and they didn't talk about anything. They had coffee, tea, and dinner. And then as they were leaving, his management were very frustrated that they didn't talk about the technical stuff. And as they were leaving, they got an order for 5 of the airplanes that they came to sell. And later on the conversation, he said, I've already done, my technical team did all the exceptions and did all the homework about you. It's just about the personality. So let's put Middle East in perspective. As you probably are experiencing now, we have a lot of growth in the Middle East with all the oil prices and everything else going around. And there is a lot of opportunities that we can cater for. I am going to take it and zoom in on Jordan a little bit and then go beyond. Jordan is a very young, dynamic country. We have about 50% of the population under the age of 18. So there is a lot of people that you can tap into and hire, and they are all talented executives / workforce. What we're looking at today is the hypermarket. We're looking at the technology, and I myself, I'm a product of this country. I went to school to Seattle, Washington, 21 years ago, and I did marketing. And just to bridge the gap, my freshman year, and I was telling Doug earlier, I went to my roommate's house for lunch, and his mom put a piece of meat on each plate, and she said, would you like second? And I said, no. And of course, his mom didn't offer anymore. And I waited till she left, and I was really starving. I went for second and third, and my roommate said, why didn't you go for second and third? And I said, your mom was supposed to insist and say, oh, you didn't like my cooking. And I said, no, in the US, no means no. And this is where the story starts. It's a cultural gap. We need to understand that when you're doing business internationally, it's not your comfort zone. You need to do, as they say, when you're in Rome, do what the Romans do. And this is when you start. I always tell people, when you want to become the Middle East expert, flying over Dubai doesn't make you the Middle East expert. And coming to the US is the same thing. Middle Eastern come to the US and they talk about their family for 15 minutes, and their CEO tells them, your time is up, I have to go. So showing fashionably late to a meeting, which we usually do in the Middle East, 15 to 20 minutes, your slot is gone. So we need to bridge all these gaps. There is a thin line between project management and Middle Eastern project management. So depending on where you are in the world, you have to adapt to what you want to do. Opportunities. I think today the Middle East offers an abundance of opportunities, being from either the Gulf or to the less fortunate countries like Sudan, Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, even Iraq, where we have facing a lot of reconstruction. And my intake is you need to find a local partner who has his hands on the pulse, who can tell you what goes and what doesn't go. And I always tell people I am US educated yet born and raised in the Middle East, so I understand the best of both cultures. And if we're thinking along a win-win situation where we bring in the technology, the know-how, and the education, and you find that local partner who can help you to do what you are thinking of doing, you will achieve your end goal. Another thing in my life that I've joined recently was the Entrepreneur Organization, which is 13,000 members around the world in 56 countries and 170 chapters, where you have people working together to learn and grow. And this journey is helping us to localize and understand more cultures. I was recently in Pakistan, Lahore and Islamabad, which I've never thought I would go. And the tremendous opportunities there in that country. So what you need to think about is what you can offer as a business and find a match for it elsewhere. And the world is becoming literally a global village, like the global chamber. You can do everything and anything you want remotely, online, and you can find your partner, and then you have to document that trust. In the Middle East, it's a handshake. In the US, you have to have an NDA and a contract. But what I always tell people, even if you have a contract, if people want to pull out of it, it's the end of it. So that trust and respect that you create with your person that you want to do business with is most important. I will stop at that, talking about what we are, and I will leave it for the questions because I think it's better to have a more interactive session.
That sounds good. Could you just address one question first in terms of some of the things you're seeing in the Middle East right now? Where do you see, you have a macro view, where are some of the most exciting business opportunities right now? Like so, say over the next year or two?
That's a great question. Well, you can look at Saudi Arabia's vision of doing what they say NEOM, which is the new city between Egypt and Jordan. And they're connecting, this is tremendous business that's going to happen over the next 5 years. In Jordan, we have the Red Dead that's connecting the Dead Sea with the Red Sea. As I'm not sure if anybody knows, Jordan has this, it's the second poorest country when it comes to water on earth. So we're connecting the Dead and Red Sea. So that's another opportunity. In Egypt, the rebuilding of the whole country is important after what they're doing now. And in Iraq, I think they need the know-how. Hopefully, in a couple of years, Syria will come up, Yemen. It's enormous. I mean, you cannot even just start thinking of what you can be done. There's a lot of business that needs to be done. It's just you need to find the right opportunity and the right partner, and things will flow.
Very good. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. And our next speaker is Habib Amine Benabdallah. And he is coming in, I believe, from Casablanca, but certainly you're coming in from Morocco. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Casablanca, indeed.
Very good. So thank you very much for sharing your perspectives today. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good presentation by Amer. I'm gonna actually try to start with some fun facts. Some fun facts that I picked up from, I don't know if you follow on Twitter, the Spectator Index. It's very interesting to follow. They give some rankings on some items. Everything is a different story, usually economic KPIs, but different ones. So in these rankings that I provided, you'll see that the Middle East and North Africa are in the top 3 of all of them except one. So international passengers, Dubai is #1 in the world now. You see quality of road, every single one of them, they're in the top 3 except one that I put there, which is the time spent eating and drinking per day. So obviously no alcohol, but well, there is alcohol, but it's not in the top 1. Yeah, exactly. So if you don't mind going to slide 2, Cesar, I'll dive into the data, and I will focus a little bit on Morocco, country I know very well, but actually I've worked and lived in different countries. I was in the US, I was in Holland, Dubai, so I've got a more of a broader perspective, but my focus in Morocco is to talk about opportunities there. So you see a map of the world, and you see Morocco is that red country, highlighted country there. And one of the interesting things is they have a lot of free trade agreements with many parts of the world. Some of them are tax-free zones, like with Jordan, as a matter of fact, Egypt, and Tunisia. So it's a zone there's no taxes. With Turkey as well. We have an FTA with the USA that was signed about 15 years ago. Don't know if it's going to stand or not, but for now it's still, I guess, standing. And there is some, I guess, what they call it's preferred trade agreement with Europe. So it's not tax-free, but there is some, I guess, incentives and I guess, what do you call them, like preferred terms of trade. And with Africa, we're trying to position ourselves in a new zone, which is basically the West Africa zone, which will give Morocco access to quite a few regional zones. So with all this, what's interesting about it is there's a few companies that bring their headquarters or their factory or something to Morocco, and they export from there. And the Moroccan government is giving a lot of incentives and encouraging that. So we will talk about that in the next slide. But for now, a couple things to consider. So Moroccan position, which is 14 kilometers from Europe, makes it a good hub for Africa, for Middle East, and for Europe. And as you can see, the cost to export from Morocco is not that expensive compared to other countries across the region, which is basically the graph on the bottom left of your screen. I've shared some data about the population, the GDP growth, unemployment, etc. What's interesting to note is that the ease of doing business, Morocco is well ranked there. It's also ranked very well in terms of the highest investment in Africa, in terms of investment and in terms of attractivity of the place. Also, Casablanca Finance City, which mirrors a bit London City, is ranked second in Africa because of the incentives it gives to the investors. Last but not least, there is, Morocco is very good in terms of infrastructure quality, which also allows for easier investment for international companies. So I've shared another one, which is the ease of doing business, which is very important for companies that are considering Morocco. So Morocco is ranked 69th worldwide, but in terms of its ranking in the region, it's very good. Huh? Its average is higher than Middle East and North Africa, higher than Africa, and higher than, for example, Egypt. So if we can go to slide number 3, and I'll tell you why Morocco is well ranked. So what they've done is Morocco developed sectorial, what we call it sectorial, is by sector, strategies that are on the long term and very clear. So for each sector, they've created an ecosystem, infrastructure around it. They've, I guess, made sure that there is plenty of HR, plenty of capable people, labor, and quality competencies that can work in this field. And they've put a bundle of tax incentives and I guess ways to encourage companies to set up shop in Morocco. And they do all this also using deal making. So for example, if a company like Renault wants to open in Morocco, they would actually do a deal with them and discuss a deal. So even they can give them extra incentives based on the amount of investment they will do. And that, so far, I mean, the strategy had only started about 5 years ago, and the results are already there. So in automotive industry, there is 50% increase in automotive exports in the past 2 years, from 2014 to 2016, with plenty of companies now opening in this ecosystem created, like Renault, Peugeot, Delphi, and Yazaki. So plenty of them opening there. In renewable energy, as a matter of fact, in Morocco, they've given the commitment to have 42% of their power provided by green energy, solar and wind. And we actually, Morocco will have the biggest solar plant in the world, according to CNN. It's still, the last phase of it is still in construction, so it will be done this year. But the 3 first parts were already done. Aerospace, we're encouraging also the creation of this ecosystem. Bombardier, Eaton, Stelia have already opened. Offshoring, especially with Europe. So a lot of companies would have their set up shop in Morocco to service European customers like Capgemini, Dell, Amazon. And same for textile. Actually, Morocco is known for what is called fast fashion, which is basically a quick delivery time for garments. Like for example, for Zara, they would make garments for them in less than 7 days because of geographical proximity. Tourism is still big. We have 10 million tourists, and basically we develop an ocean front platforms for hotels to come and invest there. And finally, in food industry, the fair trade is picking up. It's still niche production, and like argan, saffron, some cosmetic raw ingredients. But for exports, these things, you know, have high margin and high I guess, interest from the Western world. So in these specific emerging industries that I've listed, if there is any interest from your companies, they can actually talk to me so I can facilitate this. But there is plenty of incentives to come and open up shop and set up shop in Morocco. And there is a whole system of helping these companies set up and understand the environment. And as a matter of fact, you know, for example, a company that would like to work with Renault or Peugeot, it's also interesting. So suppliers of these big companies can also set up shop in Morocco. So it's not just the big ones, also the smaller ones that would like to work in these ecosystems. Just quickly to finish on the last slide. I guess, you know, it's always good, that, like Amer said, to understand your customers or your partners. And the Middle East, obviously, there is some stereotypes, as you know. So I wanted to dissipate or clear some of them. Morocco is a safe country. We don't get 10 million tourists a year if people were fearing for their lives. So it's very safe, actually. And one of the reasons it's safe is that we have a king that ensures stability. There is no political changes all that much. So plenty of stability with that. Yes, we are a Muslim country, and this is very important. I mean, obviously, you guys only see the Islam in the US that's promoted by Fox News, etc. But we follow a very moderate type of Islam with principles that embrace the freedom of choice. So, you know, it's not that I'd say it's a very moderate Islam. We have bars, we have people that drink, we have Jewish heritage, Christian, we have everything, we have good wine. So the fact that we're Muslim, it's not according to the Fox News, I guess, principles or positioning rather. And yes, finally, we're not just a desert. We have a desert, obviously. There's snow and there's diverse culture. some of the things that obviously you hear about are true as well, like corruption, which still exists, but mostly in the lower level. And there is freedom of speech, but there is further strides to be made in democracy and human development. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, whether now or later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Habib. That great presentation. Really good. Good information. And I think one thing that all Globies that I've ever met, really true Globies, feel is that we should have freedom of choice, and pragmatism and tolerance is good. So I think we're with you on that in Morocco and everywhere in the world. So we're going to switch over from the northwest corner to the northeast corner of Africa, and I know how to pronounce his name a little bit better, Kirk Galster, who is in Djibouti. And Kirk, you're global advisor with the Global Chamber. You're also director at Global Strategies Consulting Services. You're going to give us a view of that corner and that region of Africa. Thank you for participating today.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes. Great. Yeah, sometimes I'm worried about our internet here in Djibouti is not always the best connection. So I'm glad to know you can hear me okay. Without further ado, thank you for the introduction. It's a hard act to follow coming from Jordan and Morocco, and having not grown up in this region, but being fluent a little bit in Arabic and now learning French, I'm starting to get a grip on the Middle East a little better. I studied in Jordan for a semester and deployed with the U.S. military to Iraq and Afghanistan. I wanted to just highlight a few things about the Middle East and then zone in on Djibouti. As you've heard all along here, the opportunity of the Middle East is expanding exponentially. You see a lot of free trade agreements and different trade organizations like the Gulf Cooperation Council, and just different opportunities coming up as the world continues to look to transition away from fossil fuels. You'll see a lot more opportunities for investment. Every oil-based industry is trying to bring in foreign direct investment and maximize their economy and transform their economy to be more diverse. And so there's just plenty of opportunities here. A little bit about Djibouti. So Djibouti is located right across from Yemen, really close to the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. We neighbor Somalia, and we touch Ethiopia and Eritrea. Djibouti is the only location in all of Africa that has a U.S. military base and has several other military bases, including China, France, and several other large countries, which adds to the stability here in Djibouti. Djibouti's maintained a very stable position relatively compared to all of the countries around that are having difficulties, such as Yemen and Somalia and even Ethiopia. One great thing about Djibouti is the shipping. It's a major shipping route for Africa. We conduct 80 to 90% of all trade that goes through Ethiopia comes through our port here in Djibouti. And so it's a great opportunity for trade. We are developing a global chamber here. There's a lot of opportunities. We're expanding. Djibouti is really also expanding in the fishing industry and trying to get out deeper into the port with its fishing opportunities and to make that a bigger, more robust industry. The tourism industry, as Habib was speaking about Morocco, tourism all across the Middle East is huge. In Jordan and Egypt, obviously Egypt, Morocco, but now Djibouti is becoming is attracting more tourism, and so definitely it's a good place to take a look at for tourism. The Global Chamber here does have a client that is wanting to develop a hotel, and we're looking to source funding for that. So if there's any interest in the tourism business and hospitality industry, please reach out to us. We'd like to get that project moving forward. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much most of what I had to say about Djibouti, unless you had any questions, Doug.
No, we do have some questions, but we'll save those for the end. So yeah, we have several questions coming in, so keep those coming in, and those of you that are here, I'd encourage you to have your questions ready, and then when you're ready, just come up and ask them so that you can be seen around the world. So our next and final speaker, last but not least by far, is Öykü, and Öykü's from Istanbul. She's in Istanbul, and you're going to be giving us a view of a very important country and region of Turkey.
Yes. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm from Istanbul. I worked long years at the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce. Now I have my own company, and I am like advisor for the foreign investments. So, okay, I have a little bit long presentation, but we can keep it very fast. So, okay, in my presentation, I will try to mention, as it's shown, some macroeconomic outlook, foreign trade outlook, and investment environment. So, Turkey, next slide, yeah. Well, Turkey is located in the junction of three continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. And it lies at the heart of the region with a population of more than 1 billion. And well, it goes without saying that Turkey is an ideal location for firms seeking to take benefits of Middle Eastern, North African, European, and CIS markets. So I can summarize 10 reasons why to invest in Turkey. Because of the successful economy, the population, the qualified labor force, and the liberal and reformist investment climate, infrastructure, and in the next slides, as I told you, it's centrally located, and it's an energy corridor and terminal for Europe. And the taxes are low, and we have a custom union with the European Union, and we have a large domestic markets. So Turkey is ranked the 13th biggest economy in the world, and up from 18th in 2003. And Europe's next slide, please. And it is Europe's fifth biggest economy. So over the last 15 years, yeah, next slide. Yeah, you can see here over the last 15 years, Turkish economy has shown remarkable performance. And in the now. In last year it was 7.1, yeah, and you can check. I mean, in the last 6 years it was 6.6, and it's a really good growth rate. And it is in the next slide we can see Turkey is the fastest. Turkey has the Europe's fastest growth rate. Here you can see the Hungary, Poland, Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and the Euro area is the red one, and Turkey is the blue one. So it's a real successor. And yeah, I put some GDP growth of selected countries, and yes, Euro area is 2.6, but Turkey is 7.3, so which is good. Okay, and well, employment rate is like 10%. It's a little bit high, especially for in the next slide you can see we have the young employment rate problem, but well, in all over the world now the unemployment, it's a problem, I think. So, well, in inflation, Turkey has lived so many years with the high inflation, but now it's a little bit less, but still high rates for us. But I think it's because of the import and or because of the exchange rate. So we can come, public finance. We have a really strong budget. It's a very important macroeconomic for us. As you can see here, European Union defined general government budget deficit GDP ratio is minus 1.7, and the Maastricht criteria is 3%. Also, here you can compare with the other countries, and also, here you can see the general government growth step. It's also very, very less than Maastricht quotation. And we can go to the demography. Next slide. Next. Turkey has 80 million now population, and is the largest youth population in Europe. And it's not only young, it's also young, dynamic, well-educated, and multicultural population we have in Turkey. I believe we are a colorful country. So next. Okay, next slide. These are the prospects. Okay, I can show you. Here. Okay, this is the. Here you can see the skilled labor availability. Here is the Turkey's has 6.2. So which is scoring is between 0 and 10. It's a good score. Okay, next one, please. Foreign trade. We export, our export is nearly $160 billion, and in the next slide you can see our import is $240 billion. And in the next slide, we import from China, from Germany, from Russia, from USA, and from Italy. These are the top 5. And from the next slide, we can see the share in total exports. We export to Germany, to UK, to United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and USA markets. So the one problem in Turkish foreign trade is the imports are high, but it's not for the consumption. It's for the raw materials for industrial production. So this is a important point. But okay, in the next slide, please. Yes. Well, starting, this is the source of the World Bank doing business report. Starting a business, it's number of procedures, it's only 7. So it's really a good number. And in the next slide, please. Yeah, starting a business, it takes only 6-7 days. So when you come here, when you open a company, it's only 6-7 days. So it's very easy, and we don't have a tax burden. It's very slow, and yeah. It's you can establish the company in 1 day, and it's very easy. We can pass these slides. Yeah, next slides. Yeah, it's we can send this presentation. So it's what I want to say is it is. Very easy. I established a business in Turkey, and the macroeconomy is good, and Turkey strengthens its position, economic position, and the political position more and more. And we have an election in the end of June. So we will have our system maybe will change. So we are waiting now for the news. Okay, I hope I tried to do very quick, but I hope I managed.
That's an amazing amount of information in a short amount of time. And
Thank you for all.
as you pointed out, all this information is available to anybody to ask. Amer is joining me here for questions. And again, anybody here in the room that has a question, come on up here and we'll get your question in. But we have a lot of questions. So there's no shy. I'm going to take off my glasses to read this one. This is actually for you, Amer. Do you think the current economic reformations in Egypt and current inflation rates would encourage foreign investment?
I think finally they pegged, so they, what the Egyptian did is very smart today. They had a black market, and now they know that the dollar is 18.5 Egyptian pound. So there is no black market. You can actually know exactly what you're getting at some point. It was very fluctuating. So I see a lot of money coming into Egypt, and they're investing. They have a huge market, and although I'm always biased, I think people should come to join them.
Very good. Another question for Kirk. This is related to the port there in Djibouti. There's been some changes and maybe some controversy. Can you update us on, I think the government maybe seized the port from Dubai, and so there's some question about kind of where does that stand and how is that influencing trade there in the region?
Yeah, that is correct. There has been some political, perhaps a little bit, maybe the instability is the correct word, I'm not sure. But yes, P World, the Dubai port was, I don't know if it was taken over or how the government has obtained complete control over that port. And yeah, that has kind of caused some issues with trade. There are other ports that are still open that are running and are doing, just as much business as the port that got overtaken. I actually just imported a car from Europe, and it came in through that port that was taken by the government, and the car came in fine. I got it today. So trade is still happening, but I don't know politically how that, there's obviously some tension between Dubai and, the company in Dubai that got overtaken and the Djiboutian government, and I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. But trade is still very much happening and is secure and works great. And so there's no real reason to shy away from trading through Djibouti. But yeah, I mean, that is one area where Djibouti has had a difficult time with government relations with foreign-owned businesses and things like that. Djibouti boasts one of the lowest tax rates, but there has been some instability with things like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirk. This is a question from Tsungi Mukandi, and she asked, we got information on timeframes for establishing a business in Turkey. Thank you very much, Öykü. Could the panelists also give us guidelines for Jordan, Morocco, and Djibouti? And the same kind of information. Do you have a sense of availability?
Yes.
Or so maybe comparison with the other countries?
Actually, if you look at the doing business report, it will give you all of that. But in Jordan, we have a very young, dynamic government team. We have an investment commission, and recently we had got appointed a minister of investment. So if you can go to the commission, they can help you to establish a business within less than 5 days. So we beat you there, Turkey.
Nice competition. Okay, very good.
Yeah, from Morocco, real quickly, I was going to refer also to doing business index. They have these criteria, like how much it would take to start a business. I think we're around 7 days as well from Morocco. But again, it really depends on how big the business is. If it's something big where you get more, I guess, help than if it's if the level of investment is small. So it's some things to keep in mind. But the average is everything is in doing the business index.
Okay, thank you very much. Kirk, I think you have firsthand knowledge of how long it takes to start a business in Djibouti.
That's correct, yeah. It can take a little while. Djibouti doesn't rate quite as well on the charts as Jordan and Morocco and even in Turkey when it comes to like the doing business in Djibouti rate. But they have made some extremely good moves towards streamlining that process. They've created a one-stop shop office where you can go in and do it all in one place. And I don't know exactly the timeline. I haven't actually established my own company yet, but our nonprofit that I work with is here and has been established for about 15 years here with no problem. And so I know that it's very easy to do. I would suggest probably between 5 to 10 days timeline if you're just coming in to do it. But I would suggest leaving 2 weeks if you're going to be coming into Djibouti, at least 2 weeks to kind of make sure you connect with all the people you need to connect with and wrap everything up.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Another question regarding healthcare, and this is more of an open question. Didn't see too much about the healthcare industry and what's going on there. I see in our audience here the CEO of Global Med, Joel Bartholomew. They're involved with telemedicine. He probably knows quite a bit about the markets there, but the question coming in is more around, are you familiar with the telemedicine industry? Are you familiar with what some of the opportunities are in healthcare around the region? That's an open question if you've got some information.
Well, do you want to go ahead or do you want me to answer?
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay. So just a little bit about background about Jordan. So healthcare in Jordan is probably number one in the Middle East region. We have people coming for tourism, medical tourism, from the Gulf, from around the world. It's inexpensive. Just to give you an idea, some people from Jordanians from the US fly to Jordan to do their wisdom teeth and fly back, and it's cheaper than doing it in the US with the vacation. We have top-notch doctors that are Johns Hopkins graduate or Harvard or Yale, and they come back. I had a friend visiting from Chicago, and he got a sprained ankle. We went into the ER, finished within 10 minutes, and he was shocked that what we paid was less than his co-payment. So I think medical tourism is a great place for people to come. Jordan has an opportunity for anybody who wants to come and invest. If you can actually see the actual insurance companies that have backlog in the US, you can bring them into Jordan and have, we have a state-of-the-art hospital that was just built by Farah Hospital, which is like 7+ grade. And we have plenty of other doctors that can offer medical tourism.
Fantastic.
Yeah, real quickly from Morocco, I can tell you that the public health system is not to international standards. So there is a lot of investment in the private sector in health. And there's a lot of private equity firms that have taken stakes in that lately. So it's growing. The private health sector is growing to compensate for the lack of the public system. But still plenty of room to grow. The statistics of how many patients per doctor are one of the worst in the world. I think we're ranked something around 120th.
So does that create an opportunity then?
That's what I meant. Yeah, it definitely creates opportunity to invest in the sector.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and in Turkey, it's medical tourism. Its sector is growing very fast, and we have a good health system. We have many private hospitals, and especially the tourists are coming from Arabian region and from Russia. And also many from Europe and many from Caucasia, from all over the world. They are coming to Turkey and to the private hospitals, and it's getting really a very powerful sector in Turkey. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Kirk, any perspectives on that one?
Yeah, I'd like to just say I think Djibouti currently isn't necessarily the top place I would look for expanding for medical, but it's going to be emerging as a new industry here. There's plenty of opportunity, like was said about Morocco. The health industry here is pretty poorly established, and there has been some influx of investment based on that. I've seen hospitals built by the Chinese. I don't know if those were donated or if they were more of like a foreign investment for business, but the sector is growing for sure. And I think in the future, Djibouti really is kind of getting its roots as a growing nation, and I think as it grows, there's going to be more opportunity in the future. But right now, obviously, there's opportunity, but it's going to be a bigger opportunity as Djibouti grows.
Okay, very good. We have a question from the floor. Could you introduce yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, Kirk. Hi, everyone. My name is Vishal, and I am a Thunderbird graduate. I believe Habib is from there as well. There. And last year, my interest, I came to Thunderbird because I wanted to know about the international business. And last year, I went to every country you guys are from except Djibouti. So, and obviously Botswana, South Africa, and met a couple of senior business leaders. The question to you is, Kirk, the two things I observed was corruption, like to the core in the whole society of Africa, except maybe not into the northern part of Africa. And second, healthcare. It's not a business right now in that country's need. Like they can't live, like probably food or healthcare. I don't know what comes first. That it's so bad because we did not go to the hotels. We literally drove around their villages and figured out that what is the real need. So, and it was like for 2 months I spent that time.
So your question is what?
My question to Kirk is, how do you deal with when you are just right now saying, I'm interested in healthcare industry and trying to figure out a job which will help me get into that area? How do you deal with the corruption? You said knowing people, but there is a thin line what I'm trying to say, knowing people means, yes, I know people, but how do you deal with that?
Okay, so basically handling corruption. And you probably also have to deal with that many times, like daily. You want to kick off that conversation and then we'll go around the table. Thank you.
Well, corruption is a big word. I mean, it's basically what are you trying to do? In this part of the world, what they do is very simple. they legalize it. They tell you if you want a fast line, you pay extra money. So if you want your passport done in 1 week, you pay X amount and you do it. In the Middle East, we don't have that. It's basically you go smile at the guy, or you go, give him a coffee or a tea, or, whatever you want. And at some point it gets into deeper questions. So we have this issues everywhere, not just in the Middle East. How you deal with this depends what you want. If you're working with US companies, the tolerance is 0. They don't pay anything, so you have to do what you have to do, and it takes time. My major point with this is it depends on how big the project is and what you want to do. We call it, or they call it in Egypt, bakshish, which is, you're just giving him a tip. And the tip is literally asking for is $5-10. It's not, it's not corruption. Of course, what you're probably referring to is the bigger projects where you're talking that this is, they have a Mr. 50% who wants, 50% of project to start. And I can talk only from the Jordan perspective. This doesn't exist because we have 0 tolerance for this from, His Majesty downwards. But in other countries, as you said, it's more about that. The reason that the only way you can deal with this is avoid these countries for now, because what you're saying is at least what we saw with the Arab Spring. People are not, will come and questions you day after day, and they will come after you. So, avoid these countries for now. Although the higher the risk, the higher the return. There is plenty of places we can go to when you can get your money and don't have to deal with this. At least this is what I would do.
Okay, very good. Other perspectives on that?
I guess I'll go ahead and go. Corruption is definitely a problem in Africa, as mentioned. And here in Djibouti, I do believe that there is plenty of, maybe under the table type things that are happening. Maybe they look like taxes. I don't know. I can't really actually even talk too much about what I have heard, just because of the government situation here. But one thing I would say is that the best way to kind of explore Djibouti is for us to get in contact with an expert in that field, and then to kind of explore and find out what kind of hoops we have to jump through to get something done in the medical field. And so what I would start to do is I would work with someone and start to figure out what the process is to be involved in that business, and then we could kind of analyze whether or not it's worth the risk, if there's any risk for corruption, then where you'd have to pay bribes and things like that. Obviously, I strongly advise staying away from anything that looks like a bribe, smells like a bribe, coming from the United States with the Foreign Corrupt Protection Act. And so, I agree. I think we just would take it step by step, and I think it's negotiable. I don't think that there's anything majorly that you would come across, but you want to just be very careful as you approach it to ensure that you're in line with government regulation from the United States.
Okay, very good. Habib or Öykü, you want to handle that one or pass?
I'll pass. I think the Kirk and Amer answered it well.
Okay, very good. The next question then, Habib, why we've got you, is around the cost to export. So that was interesting and I think valuable to understand. The question is more around when you're talking about cost of export, what are the components of that, and why is it so low there? And also, can you compare setting up in Morocco with setting up in maybe a couple other areas like Accra, for instance, or some other where often people set up in?
Yes, so the cost to export, that was the cost of a container, and okay. I think in the slide, and let me open it because it had specifically, I think he mentioned what was included in that, and if not, I will let you know. Yeah, I will let you know after the call what exactly is included in the cost to export. But that was the cost per container specifically that I mentioned. Okay. Now, why is it lower than other regions? For a couple of reasons. So basically, they went and started so the Moroccan government opened a new a port in the Mediterranean. Obviously, whether it's the real estate costs or the government subsidies to develop the port were in effect. So Morocco could be competitive in the Mediterranean realm in terms of exporting. So like I said earlier, they created a whole ecosystem around it. So for companies that want to set up there, they're in trade-free zones. So even in terms of rent, they pay less rent. In terms of taxes, some products even tax-free, but some of them are lower tax. In terms of income tax and even export taxes, etc., there is some incentives. So they created a whole ecosystem for companies to come to Morocco rather than, say, go to Spain, etc. And because of the subsidies, the government subsidies, the total cost of export is more interesting in Morocco than other countries.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think we may have only time for one more question, so I'm going to have to pick one. Did you have a question? Okay, come on up. And we'll see. I was the question that was around the China Belt and Road Initiative, and that might be mainly Öykü, but could you ask your question, and if we have time, we'll do the second.
Hi,
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
my name is Neil Shainbach, and I am Vice President of Business Development for Global Med. Global Med is a technology platform company that provides access to healthcare. You guys all spoke to medical tourism. My question is, in each of your regions or countries, have you heard of telemedicine in your country trying to provide better access to healthcare for those that aren't that aren't coming in for medical tourism, specifically for chronic disease management, et cetera? And if you could just answer the awareness of telemedicine, that would be great, or access to care for local population.
Awesome.
For the local.
Thank you. Amer, because of Jordan and where it is on healthcare, do you want to start with that?
Sure. We already actually do have a couple of telemedicine agreements in Jordan with a couple of hospitals with Jordan and to the US. I think we welcome more. I understand there is a great opportunity for your kind of business in the remote areas. So Jordan is heavily populated in Amman, but if you go to the south and the north and the rural areas, I think this kind of telemedicine would be very well welcomed, and it can be explored as giving less expensive professional care between the US in your case and Jordan. So I think it's very welcomed, and we'd be more than happy to entertain it more and see how we can help you explore that further.
And presumably the doctors would be in Amman, and they would be servicing not only the country but also other countries.
Even within highly populated areas, to be able to not have to travel to the hospital through traffic at the peak of hours, you can actually do it within your urban areas as well as your outreach.
So that was Joel talking from Global Med. Before, why don't you come on up if you've got a comment, Tina? Any comments, Habib, Öykü, Kirk? Any comments about telemedicine? Are you familiar with it? Do you know the market?
I'm not real familiar with it. I don't know the market, but I would say that I would think that would be an opportunity here, simply because Djibouti is not one of those tourist medical tourism kind of locations. So if telemed could be a substitute for medical tourism here, that would be very helpful for people in Djibouti.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Öykü.
Well, I'm not so much familiar, but especially in Turkey, in the large cities, they are really well-equipped hospitals with experienced doctors. So I think it's a good opportunity also for Turkey. Yeah.
Okay, very good. You want to come into the screen, Tina?
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to say, one, from a personal experience of someone having to leave the country for getting better consults and better healthcare in the U.S. One, telemedicine, honestly, is for regions like Jordan, the Middle East, overall, you're giving them a solution that's 20 years in the future. So, and it's a very ripe market for it. The policies and everything out there is really ripe. It's something that you can create. You can go in right away. One opportunity I see for all of the Arab world, I mean, is consults, telemedicine for consults. I mean, yes, we have great doctors, but when it comes to second opinions and consults and the cost of travel, and also looking at it from a political point of view, the actual ability to fly to countries worldwide, we don't have that. I mean, especially right now with all the changes that are happening. So telemedicine, I think, is one of the really good opportunities. One for Jordan, geographically speaking, everything is condensed in one place. And overall, in the Middle East, I think when you look at how the cities and how the urban planning is done, it's random. It's all done random. So if you want to come and fix a solution, provide a solution where it says, hey, we're comparing it to Phoenix, it doesn't work that way. You have to look and be really creative, jump over the problems and see solutions that are customized. I think one great idea in terms of technology, and Ahmed agrees, is yes, some homes probably don't have windows, but each person in the house probably has an iPhone 7. And it's crazy. So the solution,
and a doctor.
Yeah, and a doctor.
Because it's just when you're
Or
growing up
married
in
to
that
one.
in the Arab world, you're either a doctor or an engineer.
Yeah, because it's because of the culture. They all want you to thrive in the education. Jordan, for example, really highly educated, really talented people, but unemployment. So if you focus also on collaborations with universities on vocational trainings, you're the expert know-how, do the vocational training, for example, in telemedicine. That's one opportunity I would suggest. And thank you.
And Doug,
So
before
we
we close,
stay here before we close, because this feels like a Jordan sandwich.
Yes,
It is.
no, I wanted
very
to actually
We need to wrap up.
say, yeah,
Go ahead,
but
please.
wrapping up, I just want to follow up with what Habib was saying about, Islam and Jordan and Iraq. I've been to Turkey a couple of times. I've been to Morocco. I cannot attest to Djibouti, but I can tell anybody who's watching, the only dangerous thing being there is overeating. In Turkey, in Morocco, and in Jordan. The tourism is spectacular. I know we're talking about business, but I mean, starting with Jordan to go to the Dead Sea, Petra, Wadi Rum, we have about 10,000 archaeological sites. In Morocco, it's enormous. And in Turkey, I cannot even start with the resorts. So I personally believe, starting with a positive attitude, going somewhere, trying something new. Don't believe what you see on news only, because I mean, if we did that, I wouldn't be here in the US because I didn't know if Mr. Trump will let me in the country or not, being a Muslim. So, but I come in and I have beautiful people, welcoming us in the US. So the news likes to pick bad news, but out there is each and every one of us is a good thing. And I think, doing business together will get us closer. And thank you for hosting us. It's a great pleasure talking to each and every one of you and being part of this panel. And I would like to continue the discussion and see how we can do things better for the world.
Bravo. So thank you. We've come to the end of our hour. Thank you all for listening around the world. Send your questions to info@globalchamber.org, and you'll be seeing this video actually coming up soon with a summary. Thank you to all the speakers. Amazing speakers, great information. Thank you, and take care.